want to talk to you today about something that's been close to my heart for a real long time, and it's the Satyanarayana Puja. Growing up, this puja was everywhere. If someone invited us for a Satyanarayana Katha, we absolutely had to go. Missing it or not eating the prasad, that was considered a big no-no, almost like you committed a sin. And the way the five stories are told, yes, they are devotional, but to be honest, there's always this underlying message of fear. Do the puja right and you get your wish. Miss a step or don't eat the offering. Guess what? Something bad is going to happen. It is presented almost like a transaction with consequences. For someone like me, these were not beliefs that I was willing to accept. So naturally, as I grew up and started my spiritual journey, I had questions, lots of them. What if someone's allergic to nuts or gluten? Because the prasad is typically made up of wheat, nuts, milk, and ghee. Are they doomed if they cannot eat it? What if someone genuinely cannot attend the puja when invited? Could be they're traveling for work, or could be that they just don't want to attend that particular day. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Come on, just use common sense, make exceptions, because everywhere we keep hearing that the scriptures always give an exception. Well, I don't know about that, but here is the thing. If you take the traditional narrative literally, there is no room for exceptions here, unfortunately. It becomes this rigid set of rules, and that bothered me a lot. For the longest time, decoding Satyanarayana Puja sat on my mental to-do list. It was always there because I wanted to get deep into it. But on my spiritual journey, or in my spiritual journey, I prioritized other texts. The Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads. These are the real pillars of Hindu spirituality. They're universal and experiential, inviting you to question and explore. Satyanarayana Puja comes from the Puranas, the texts that came much, much later. In many cases, they are just mythological stories, and they are a mix. Some are spiritually grounded, but many also carry messages that demand just blind belief. And tracking down the source of a Purana, oh, trust me, that's a whole adventure in itself. The Satyanarayana Katha, as an example, has its source in the Skanda Purana, in one of the in Reva Kanda. But when I finally went deep into the research, I found versions of the Skanda Purana that seemed to exclude this story. Now, I also saw references and I was able to research that I found it in some versions of the Bhavishya Purana. But again, in some versions and not in all versions. Back to my statement about the consistency of the Purana sources. Unfortunately, that's a challenge with these later texts. But enough of the authenticity or the source of the Puranas. Let's get on with the Katha and see if there is any meaning to even perform it. Because here is what I believe. I believe good Puranic stories, independent of the source or the consistency of the source, doesn't matter. They rest on a strong spiritual foundation. I really believe that. The narrators, and the reason is because the narrators during the Bhakti movement choose to communicate deep philosophy through stories in an understandable manner. They wanted to make it accessible to everyone, irrespective of caste, creed. And they just did not want these philosophical dialects to be limited to scholars. So I started to look at Satyanarayana Puja from the lens of a narrator, conveying deep philosophy. And then I wanted to make sure I put the lens of the Gita and the Upanishads on this. And the result, my friends, was beautiful. It really was. By Krishna's grace, it all clicked. The spiritual foundation became crystal clear. It's actually brilliant. Let me share the three real reasons why you should perform a Satyanarayana Puja. First, It's about access to the divine form or a supreme. Look, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna actually asks Krishna a very fundamental question. Evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvam paryupasate yacha api aksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. Simply put, out of all the devotees who are steadfast in your worship, who worship you in a personal form, or who worship you in an impersonal, eternal form, which of these are more perfect in yoga with you or communion with you? Which path is better for devotion? Meditating on your personal form or contemplating on an impersonal, eternal, formless, impersonal, absolute, or supreme? Krishna's answer is very compassionate in this regard. He says, Mai avesha manaha ye mam nityayukta upasate shraddaya paraya upetaha teme yuktatama mataha. He says, those who fix their minds on me, Arjuna, and engage in my devotion with steadfast faith, I consider them to be most perfect in yoga, which means Krishna is advocating for a personal form of devotion. Basically, saying, keep a personal form in front of you and get devoted to that form. But Krishna knew that he has not answered Arjuna's question fully, because the fundamental issue with Krishna's answer is, if it's a supreme being, how is it limited only to a personal form? Why not the impersonal, eternal form? So he does clarify, saying that the formless, eternal, all pervading God or Supreme can absolutely lead to enlightenment. It's a valid path. But here is the catch, it is difficult for most humans. Krishna explains this beautifully when he says, Kleshaha adhikataraha tesham avyakta asakta chetasam avyakta hi gatihi dukkham dehavadbihi avapyate. Meaning, for those who attach their minds to an impersonal form, the path is difficult. Why? Because we are embodied beings. We believe and we identify, many of us unfortunately, with our bodies. So, for such individuals who identify themselves with their bodies, how can they comprehend an abstract, impersonal form? It's hard. And that's precisely why Satyanarayana Puja is to be done. It offers you a path, an accessible personal form of the divine when you perform the puja, a deity you can connect to. You can offer your devotion. You are not just following a ritual when you perform this puja, but you're actually allowing yourself to connect with the divine in a way that works for you as a human being. Satyanarayana Puja is literally Krishna's recommendation based on the verses that I just described. Devotion to a personal form that you can relate to. And hopefully, as you keep performing the puja repeatedly, the devotion further strengthens in you. The second reason you would perform Satyanarayana Puja is about commitment and truthfulness. Think about it. What's the core message running through the five stories of the Satyanarayana Katha? When you give a word, keep it. When you make a promise, honor it. Don't make excuses. Don't tell white lies. Don't habitually put off what you're committed to. It's teaching us integrity. It's teaching us that our words matter. It's not about debating right versus wrong or being defensive in it. You give a commitment, you keep it. Now, that commitment isn't something to be taken lightly. In today's world, where we casually commit to things and just as casually bail out, this message is actually really powerful. It's asking us to be people of our word, to be truthful in what we say and follow through on what we promise, no matter how small or big our promise or the word that we give. Let that sink in for a minute. Keep up your word. That's the second reason. The third reason is the power of good company. It's the association that we have, the people we interact. Satyanarayana Puja isn't meant to be done alone. It calls for inviting family and friends. It calls for performing the puja any time of the day, any day of the year. but it prescribes that you do it with family and friends, participate together, share the prasadam or the offering of the divine. It's emphasizing what the Gita talks about repeatedly, the importance of satsang or good association. The people around us shape us. When we gather with like minded people who share a devotional mindset and who want to grow spiritually, it elevates all of us. You grow spiritually. You associate yourself with blind believers or worshippers, you become a blind believer. So, Satyanarayana Puja creates a community of seekers, a support system, a reminder that we are not on this journey all by ourselves, and there is a satsang or an association that's there to help us out. So, what's the real takeaway then? Here's what I want you to remember. The next time you perform Satyanarayana Puja at home or attend one at somebody else's home or anywhere, shift your perspective. Move away from this fear based thinking. Move away from if I don't do X, exactly something bad will happen. Move away from what the stories literally mean. Instead, focus on these three things. One, you're connecting with an accessible form of the divine in the form of that Satyanarayana Murti. You're opening yourself to the devotion in a way that works for you. Two, you're recommitting to living with integrity, to be someone who keeps their word, every small word. Three, you're in good company. You're nurturing relationships with family and friends who share your values, or at least for that moment are focused on the same values. And what about those rules? What about that rules of eating prasadam and everything? Well, if you're gluten free, don't eat the wheat prasad. It's obvious in that sense. Put some scientific brain to that. If you're a vegan, skip the milk offerings. Have a fruit that was offered instead. Or just take the sanctified water, the tirtha. These are trivial details, and that's not the point of the puja. The point is accessibility, commitment, community. The point is to grow spiritually and not to perform a ritual perfectly. Finally, what about desiring or making wishes while performing the puja? Is that permissible? Well, we need to go deeper into it. It's a long explanation. I have an entire chapter on it in my book, The Arjuna Way. There's also a question and answer video that's coming up very shortly on this channel where I address that particular question and many more. Check that out in a couple of weeks when it comes out. In closing, Satyanarayana Puja understood correctly is actually a beautiful practice. It's not about fear or punishment. It's about devotion, truth, and togetherness. Now, I hope this perspective helps you appreciate this tradition more deeply. And maybe, just maybe, if it takes away some of that anxiety around doing it right, I feel with Krishna's grace I have achieved my purpose in making this video and communicating this message. Because when you understand the why behind the ritual, the how becomes much more meaningful. So until next time, stay curious, stay healthy, stay blessed.